We will call the Wright County Board of Adjustment meeting to order on February 11th, 2021.
First item of business, Mr. Chairman, approval of the January 8th minutes.
Yep,
I'll make a motion to approve the January 8th minutes for 2021.
I'll second it.
moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay,
First item up, Mr. Chairman, is Matt Bronder. Give your names to Terry, please.
I'm Matt Bronder. Bertie Miller.
What we have, Mr. Chairman, is a 13,208 square foot lot on Lake John. The proposal is to replace the existing one-story, 572 square foot dwelling with a new modified two-story over, and the applicant and I talked a little bit, are you gonna ask for the walkout or just go with the lookout?
I would like to do the walkout if,
So it'd be a walkout basement at a corner, and so the plans that the board has seen and the plans shown here aren't for a walkout, but that's part of the proposal. It's one of the things I talked with them about, it. Well, if you're gonna, I mean, it's 3 more feet, you're already where you are, let's see what the board says. So that, when you review the plans or think about it, just keep that in mind. And so, I'm not gonna go through all the square footages with this. They're all, you know, in the staff report, in the notice. And then the septic system itself also needs a couple of variances from the property line, the right of way, and the house. As shown in the site plan that's on the screen and was provided. I really don't have a whole lot more to add. It is at the existing and same setback that the existing house is at. It's a significant expansion over in both in terms of square footage, footprint, and livable space. The lot is extremely limited. As you can see on this survey, that is the bluff line. In most of these cases now, with some surveyors, they'll send me the topography on the survey, and I will go through it and evaluate it, and then between myself, the surveyor, and sometimes Bernie, depends upon if Bernie's on the project, we'll work through the bluff definitions, because they are kind of odd. We did get some more clarification on that too this week. And then we establish where a bluff line would be, and goes back and everything gets placed on it. So in this case, the house exists in front of the bluff line, so it's in the bluff. Most of the addition that's happening here, the expansion, is occurring on the back side. There is one thing I will bring up. In the notice, it says 18.4 feet from the center line of the road. That's actually 18.4 feet from the right of way, not the center line. If that was the center line, it would actually be out in the right of way. It's not. It's 18.4 feet. A miss on the notice. When I reviewed it, I didn't catch it. So it's actually 50.3 feet from the actual traveled center line. We did receive approval from the township. We did have 2 neighbors that objected for setbacks and the number of setbacks that were requested. There was another one received this morning from David Johnson, same type of thing. He lists out what he opposes in this one. Also to mention, the existing boathouse would be replaced. That is a slight expansion, not a huge expansion, but a slight expansion. That boathouse is within the bluff, but right now it also sits over the water. And so the proposal, although it's an expansion, moves it back from the water's edge. But it, you know, again, the board should review that, because it is a slight expansion, and it also, by moving it back, although it's better from the lake standpoint, it's also more excavation in the bluff, because now you're moving back and digging back into the bluff in order to move it back. So the boathouse itself meets a side yard and meets height requirements, but it's that lake setback and the fact that it's in a bluff. Those are the 2 things with the boathouse. So yeah, as mentioned, the township did approve. The opposition are from a Johnson, a Bixby, and another Johnson. And then we also had and a Deborah Johnson as well, lists some concerns with the setbacks and the request itself. We did have one response from a Brian Crane, who doesn't really object. He just had some some questions about his own lot and potential for him in the future in septic systems. So he didn't really oppose it or you know, agree with it. He just, or just a neutral response, but he sent it in, it's in the file.
Okay.
And I can go through, this is the proposed house plan. You know, I worked on a planning commission in the city, and this reminds me of like a detached townhome. It's fairly narrow and long. And so that's kind of what this reminds me of. It is, I believe, I remember the width of it. Instead of pulling out the plans. But that's, it's a little bit narrow to fit on the site, but then a little bit longer. Doesn't include an attached garage with spancrete in a storage space underneath it. Finished lower level, finished main level, and then upper level, it's actually the biggest level of the house that has space over the top of the garage. So there'll be space above and below the garage on this. And I do have pictures of the existing site. It's an extremely old structure. You know, I'm not going to judge whether it's livable or not, but it looks pretty worn down. Been there a long time. There have been no other files on this property, so they haven't done anything out here. What I got, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, sir?
Yeah, I can add a little bit here. So Matt, just trying to do what's reasonable. It came to me, you know, to try to figure out how to deal with the septic system. We started out, and I think Matt actually had another person that was interested in buying this, and they came with a concept, and I think they even sent it to Barry and stuff. But you know, Matt's trying to do something here reasonable. You know, I said I don't think that's reasonable. What was initially they were initially looking at, so we backed down. He worked with Casey Holmes. You know, we all as a team kind of to figure out and do something reasonable, and you know, with the idea of trying to go no closer than it is right now, and to not increase the square footage within the bluff. So as you can see, we took a little bit out. There's a little bit of a deck that sticks down on the lakeside. So basically it's about the same square footage that's in the bluff setback. You know,
I would say in the bluff.
yeah, in the bluff, not the
bluff.
setback, I'm sorry. Yep, and you know, so we kind of worked our way backwards with the septic. This is a type 4 septic, so we could cut the size down considerably to minimize variances. And I know there's a number of variances, but you know, we could have alleviated some of these variances, but made other ones more severe, you know. So the 15 feet, I think, from the drain field is like from the corner of the house. You know, that's an area that I think makes some sense. In this case, also I look at it, the road is, the edge of the road, there's quite a bit of an area between the edge of the road and the garage or even the property line. So usually we try to get 20 feet from the garage to the property line. In the township, you know, we discussed it with them. You know, they were fine with that setback. Getting down to the 18.4, they just like to sometimes be able to park without parking in the right of way. So they were fine with that. Elevation wise, the thing is, the house is set up pretty much perfect for the elevation. There's almost really very minimal dirt work that has to be done for this house to fit in there. Even to get a walkout, there's almost minimal dirt work. The house just pretty much sits in there. The guy did a really good job designing that. As far as, you know, building coverage and all that goes, it's you know, we're down under 14.3, we're under 15%. You know, the house design tried to maximize as much square footage in the smallest footprint. And you know, this entire area, I know it is bluff, but this entire area, if you looked at all the places along here, which on some of you are probably familiar, there's bluffs all up. I mean, this basically for sure, I would say, Barry, and you can tell me what you think, but it seems like the bluff goes probably about 6 lots to the east and maybe a long ways to the west. There's not ever been a history of really any issues with the bluff and the concern with it. You know, most of these places, like you can see the neighbors on both sides here are sitting way, way closer down in the middle of the bluff, not, you know, at the top of it. And I was curious, Barry, was there any response from the DNR?
No,
And so typically, what's that?
no, never.
Yeah, the DNR, I asked them if they would send a response if they were in favor of it, and they said they only send a response if they're opposed to it. So, I mean, it would be nice if they would say, you know, that they think it's a good idea or whatever. They just stay neutral. If they're okay with it, they don't say anything, is what they told me. So, in the boathouse, we've designed that so it's basically pushed back so that the grade of the back of the boathouse would be right at the elevation, so you wouldn't have to build the steps coming up. You can walk out and have a flat roof on the top of the boathouse. So, I mean, it is moving back some, and yes, it's excavation within kind of the toe of the bluff. But if you're gonna try to rebuild that old boathouse, you would end up, if you tried rebuilding it right where it was, you would end up digging out about what we would have to, the same for the new boathouse. So it's not, I don't know how concerned you are about that, but that's a huge improvement there. That's all I pretty much have.
Within our percentages too that we're using on the property totaled into it is including that deck area and the future stairway approaching to that boathouse also, just so for future sake of it, that it's included at least with those numbers.
Okay. Bring it up here.
Well, we got public.
Oh, there is no public.
Is there anyone on the Teams meeting regarding this request? I'm not hearing anything, Mr. Chairman, so.
Okay, Bob?
Well, I think there's a lot going on this property. I've read through all your plans and that sort of thing. It really concerns me that you're that close to the road with for snow removal. You're close to everything. I think I would like to see this in person with a site inspection is where I would like to go with this. And I don't know if it's, well, I'll just leave it at that for now, let the others speak.
And I'm fine with the site inspection. The boathouse concerns me. I mean, going back in and excavating back into that. Would there be any consideration there of eliminating the boathouse and where that pad is and then just having a pad there? I mean, the excavation has been done. It's already been protected, you know, fix it. I know the lake is nice to put all your toys in and all that kind of stuff. But to move it back into the bluff, to protect that, and that ground out there is a sandier soil, I know it is. To dig back, you're really gonna have to open that bluff up to be able to push it back.
Well, yeah, and I agree, and I would say that so Barry, can you replace his boathouse without any expansion right where it sits?
Yeah.
If you didn't increase the size, can you slide it back some?
Well, no, because of the bluff impact. So the thing would be is that you can't build out over the water. So the only thing here you could do is reduce it to the point where it's not over the OHW. So I'm just kind of measuring out what we have here and by 16. 10 by 16, I think.
He's got plans for
I
it.
think it's 9.8 by something.
10 by 7, what, are you talking about the existing one?
Existing.
Yeah, the square footage, if you were to look at the existing boathouse, 170 square feet. Well, the thing is, it's, on the survey, I don't know if you can tell, it's not really square, you know? So partially probably because it's kind of falling apart, maybe. I don't know what it really looks like. I didn't go down there, Matt,
So,
but-
so in this case, you know, as Board Member Mall pointed out, you could do either a flat patio type area, or, you know, whatever size can get you without doing any more excavation. So I guess the one thing I would think, and that's the first thing that popped into my mind was, okay, you do a paver and you just set a, you know, whatever you can get for a storage building down there. Because me looking at it, it's like, well, that's a long way up and down the hill with fishing rods,
Right.
you know, life jackets, whatever else. I would want some type of storage down there. Now, if the board says, well, no, we don't want you to move it back or expand, you know, the excavation of the bluff, that kind of thing, I guess you're allowed 10 cubic yards. If you could replace the same size and move it back without disturbing more than 10 cubic yards, then I think we actually have a different area, so that's possible. I don't know if it is or not. I guess I'd have to see the calculations for the materials, but in this case, that also gets more difficult because it's you can't just go straight back, you gotta go back and up. Otherwise, you're gonna have the hill on top of your boathouse coming down on top of your boathouse. So, I mean, the board can set the parameters for it. By statute, they're allowed to replace. The only thing we can control here is if replacement, there's limits on what you can do as far as moving it because of the impact of the bluff setback or the bluff, and then it can't be replaced over the water. That is the one thing that we can't.
Right.
You know, same thing, we've had properties or structures over a property line. A lot of those we had them move. We did have one where they signed corresponding easement agreements because they both use it, and we allowed that one to be replaced. Cases, we just have to move it so it at least is on your property. Same thing here. This is public property. Same thing, it's just got to be moved off of water, moved completely onto this property. No deal issue.
And I would say, Matt, it's up to you, but I do think that, you know, that they're willing to work on something that's reasonable there. I mean, because he can replace it not over the water. You know, I think he could slide it back some stay. I mean, right now it looks like to me, just rough math, you know, if it's probably pretty close to that 10 cubic yards or less right now, the way it is. So I think that, you know, I think we would be able to work through that.
I guess that's one of my concerns, is to being able to work through that in the bluff, the way it's sitting, you know,
Yeah.
to be able to not make a total mess and,
Yeah,
Okay, so the other thing would be 10 cubic yards for the boathouse itself. Are you going to be putting stairs down the bluff? Are you going to be moving dirt for that? We've had those types of things.
The steps we showed on here, and I think the way we've seen that, the DNR, the way they recommend doing that is on post. Yeah.
We get a lot of requests from people that they want to do those big flat stones and do a stone walking step down. Well, the bluff regulations really don't allow that, but I've had people, well, if I'm gonna put it on a post, I gotta excavate. Well, no, you're drilling a hole.
yeah.
There's a difference between doing that and terracing
Yeah.
4 feet wide all the way down a 40-foot slope.
Yeah, and that's not the case, and the way this was kind of laid out and we looked at it, you know, if we don't move it back and we built it right where it is, you couldn't get on top of it without steps. So you would, you know, a little bit of impervious and stuff down there, so you'd walk down the hill and come back up the steps. So we moved it back to where basically you would just come down the steps and walk straight out on it, you know, and there would be just blend in perfectly with the grade. But that 2.5 or 2.3 feet off the lake, you know, a person can adjust that, you know.
yeah, some of the intent of moving it back off the lakeside would be to, you know, protect the building within that OHW, so it's, you know, it's keeping it out of the water. Right now, like mentioned, it's a few feet into the water line, and it's slowly eroding underneath there, so if we could take that same dwelling and just shift it back to a safer, usable space would be ideal, but there is room for adjustment, I would say, for how it would fit. On the cross-section of the boathouse, on the blueprint plan, it does show that elevation pretty well, how we'd be able to approach the top of it without having to do further excavation of the stairs, so it would fit within that hillside. To also control that drainage and everything behind that building too, I could adjust the foundation structure to what would be needed to make sure that we're going to be holding up that hillside properly after it's excavated, if the buildings can be placed there, so that we're not creating more of an erosion diversion around there and, you know, extra runoff or any excess that way going to the lake. That would not be ideal, obviously. Also, to make the structure lasting longer too, we can calculate and maybe even have some designs done for the foundation to strengthen that up too. So now the existing wooden structure that has paneling behind it, obviously would be a concrete foundation, just so we could retain that hillside there as well.
I want to know who's going to carry that extra 10 yards they dig out back up the hill.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You gotta do it quickly with the frozen lake. Yeah. I guess if we're gonna do site inspection, I guess that was one of my concerns to start with.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. Paul?
Yeah, when I consider variances like this, I would like to see if we can make some improvement with the existing out of compliance issues, in this case setbacks. And, you know, I try to look for things that we can do to improve the, and preserve the water quality and the surrounding areas. And in this case here, I think we're going in the opposite direction. We're seeing, we have current, 4 setback issues, and we're making no attempt to improve any of these. And on top of that, you want to ask for a couple more variances. You know, and then we have the septic system variances. And I'm really not seeing any hardship or practical difficulties with this plan. And then, you know, add on top of it is we got the bluff issue. And, you know, we don't have a lot of wiggle room with that. Now, the setback, I mean, our site visit, you know, may help clarify some of that. But still, we don't have a lot of wiggle room there. The boathouse did concern me, but listening to everybody, it looks like we might have some solutions for that. So I'm willing to listen a little bit more on the boathouse. And basically, you know, we're getting back to what kind of happens a lot. We got to put in a big house on a small piece of property, and in order to make it work, we're asking for a lot of things, and it really doesn't make it easy for us in the future when other people come. So I guess on the upside, I think you did a great job in your written description. You really did. I don't see a lot of people putting the time and effort like you did in describing that. That was good. And you did put a lot of work and effort on designing the house to fit into the site. So you're doing a lot of things right. But in my position here, I need to see some more improvements in some of these existing setback issues. So,
Sure.
But other than that, those are my 2 cents, I think. So,
Okay.
I guess the other thing is what, for drainage, you know, with all this adding, there's really, I didn't see any plan for for drainage and how to hold the water from erosion.
I would definitely be willing for any suggestion of what would be desired for that as well too. It does sound like it is intruding a lot over all these variances because we're trying to keep that building out of the bluff area. If we were to move it, which I'm not saying I would like to do, move it into that bluff area, we could eliminate majority of all these setback issues that we're applying for these variances for. But by trying to respect that bluff area and keep the building back and still just do a, you know, modest sized building, keeping it underneath our square footages, we do end up encroaching in multiple areas that way. So it does sound bad, but the major one that we're trying to save it from would be that bluff side without encroaching on that any farther than what's existing already on the building.
And I think a hard part is, you know, that, all right, you own a piece of property like this, you know, and it's like, where do you start, right? And so, you know, Barry, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, you suggest people ask for what they want, right? Yeah. So Matt came to me with what he wanted, and I said, I don't think you're gonna get anywhere with that. I mean, it's too much to start with. So, so we backed down. We have a couple other renditions, not of house plans, but of footprints, and we worked our way down. The initial plans didn't include a type 4 septic system because, you know, basically out here you have some of the best soil in the county for it. You know, you usually don't need it, but a type 4 allows you to take that drain field down from 800 to, you know, 500 square feet, so we can minimize there. So, you know, so yeah, it's a place to start, and you know, person will have to look at more what you know, what kind of a compromise a person can do. you know, and it's hard for us to know exactly what you're most concerned about. And so, you know, as far as the site visit goes, it's gonna be pretty hard to see the boathouse. I don't know that I'm making it, I don't know, Matt can carry us up and down, he's in pretty good shape, I think, but I'm not gonna, I don't know, it's gonna be a tough one to get down there to look at that, or we can get back up.
Probably get up and down once, 'cause that's about it.
Yeah.
I can get a bunch
Then
of,
throw me the cooler and a lawn chair, and I'll watch somebody else do the rest.
But anyways, I'll say that, you know, but I think that we could take pictures or do whatever, you know, we need to do there to demonstrate that, but then, you know, we need to figure out what to come back with, you know, and so, if you have a site visit, you know, Barry, would you think that would happen once it warms up next week or something, or the following week maybe? And just so we'd have,
Following week gets tough, I'm going fishing.
just so we'd have time to work through to find out your concerns when we meet out there, and then come, you know, and then address it, so, you know. Because I'd like to see what you guys' concerns are when we're out there, you know, some more.
You know, just listening to the board, I think we kind of all have the same concerns about a lot. And, I mean, Barry and Matt, you've done a good job of trying to fit. But at the end of the day, if you look at these lots, they were lotted out 50s, 30s, 40s, and they were designed, you know, to have a little cabin on, family comes out on the weekends, and we're progressing, we're putting bigger houses and those things. But we're still stuck with that lot because two people on the other side aren't selling their lot to put them together. And it makes it difficult to stay within the ordinances on these little lots that were made in the 40s and the 50s. So, you know, can you come down to a 2-bedroom? I know it's hard on the resale and on families because everybody wants a 3-bedroom house. But can you know, is there any way to shrink a little bit? I mean, because we're dealing with the small lot, and that's none of our fault. That was done a long time ago.
Is it concerned 3-bedroom or the size?
It would be more the size.
Okay.
You know, you can have all the bedrooms you want. It's the setbacks.
That's the setbacks for me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty clear on that.
Sure.
You know,
that was brought up at the Southside Township meeting as well too, you know, the properties were established in the 50s, you know, to be probably a cabin, things like that. One other thing too in the 50s that they didn't have considered was a functional septic system like we'd like to put in there now, you know, cesspool pit, something like that just seeps into the soil that way too.
It was,
Right.
and we're dealing with, in 2020, what they did in 1950 and 1940. You know, people wanted to come out to the lake on the weekend and do whatever, so the farmer that owned it all, you know, he wanted to capitalize, so he split it all up in these little teeny lots and put these little cabins on so everybody could come out and have their weekend from the cities. And I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s on Sugar Lake. They come out on the weekends. There wasn't, I don't think, one of them along the south end of Sugar Lake that was a year-round house. You know, it was all weekends. When the weekend came, it was a stream from the cities, and on Sunday afternoon, it was a stream away.
Yeah.
You know, they'd stay out there for their vacation for a week. And that's what these are all designed to do, and now we're trying to put year-round homes on them with year-round sitters, and we gotta make them fit. And you do very well, Bernie, I'm not,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's what we're dealing with up here, to try to keep this fair across the county and
Well,
make them work.
We all have to, I mean, we're all challenged with the same problem.
Yep.
I mean, it's, you know, I mean, there's pressure on every lake and every lake lot to do as much as you
Absolutely.
possibly can.
Absolutely.
And, you know, when you look back, and Mike Corey brought this up at the township meeting, you know, they were talking about hardship, and Mike Corey's, you know, corrected them, said it's actually practical difficulty, and they're like, well, what the heck is that? We never heard of that before, you know, and so, you know, practical difficulty, one of the things is it reasonable, and he said the state hasn't defined what's reasonable, so that's up to you to decide what you think's reasonable, and I think that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
You know, the other thing, does it, I think it has to do, does it fit with the character of the neighborhood, right? And if you go up and down this, I would say there's a large portion of these that have been updated. There's a lot of people that live, there's a lot of people that live year-round on this stretch of road, there's no question. And so most people are down closer. So, you know, that's up for debate. And then is this due to the plight of the owner? Is his request, so, or is it specific to the character of the property? So, I mean, now if we replatted this lot and had a bluff, they would have moved the road back even further, or they would have done other things, but this has already been created. It already has basically an entitlement to be able to build on there. So it's a matter of, you know, working together and trying to figure out what is reasonable.
I would say that the one thing that statute has done is made that particular portion a little bit more difficult to actually meet. Because now by statute, this structure can be replaced without variance. And so from a staff perspective, the practical difficulty, that specific piece on was it created by the owner gets more difficult. Well, in this case, you know, the owner has the ability to place as is where is. And so the need for the variance now is the fact that the structure got larger, which that is only that of the applicant, because the property was purchased with the existing structure on it. So it gets more difficult to say, well, they didn't create the need for this variance. Well, the fact that you want to make it bigger creates that need. You know, because it's allowed now by statute, by law, we can't even say no. That's an odd situation, that they can't have a structure. Prior to 2006, just to replace, you had to get a variance, because that wasn't actually codified in state law. Now it is.
But the other thing is, you legally can't rebuild anything on this property other than replace what's there and meet the setbacks.
Without intruding in the
So it's
setback.
not, there's no way to do anything other than replace what's there without a variance.
And they can legally do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so,
Another note, as far as like the neighbor in the neighborhood, you know, it's been a long time since I have seen as many concerned neighbors write in as we have there, and they all have to deal with the setback issues, so, and the size. So that's something I think we should note as also as well as a reason for concern.
Yeah, and I think listening to what's been said up here, the big thing is, you know, if we were out there and take a look, as you know, Bernie, sometimes we change our minds at sight. You know, it's not going to vary greatly, but it may vary a few feet here, there, and everywhere else. But
Yeah.
at this point, I'd have to say there's not any support for this.
And the difficulty with this particular site too, you know, with these plans, I agree, they take a lot of care to try to fit this in. The difficulty is, no matter what changes you make, they're gonna be marginal, because you're looking at setbacks from four sides.
Right.
So, you know, unless you came back and said, well, you just get replacement, any alteration of the plan is gonna be somewhat marginal, because you can only go so narrow, and you can only scrunch it so much, and even if you do, you're still gonna need variances from all four sides. There
Right.
just isn't much space here, so just keep that in mind as you're thinking.
The square footages that we're trying to achieve out of it too, like the main level, I believe it's right around 1,125 square foot. So that footprint's not very large. And by using that space above the garage and under the garage, which is already going to be within that footprint, we're trying to utilize as much space as possible without expanding that footprint that's going to be overtaken on the property too. You know, bigger concern outside of our bluff line setback was the percentages. You know, we still have the house areas at 14.3, and then the impervious was at 20.8. By scrunching this in there as closely as we can. On the lakeside too, with that bluff area, we did take a small portion of it out that is existing there. The existing building has a deck on the lakeside, and then we also did shrink the the footprint size to 14.6 facing the lake, removing 5.5 feet for a deck area, which would at least, you know, be towards an impervious side of it for creating that water diversion also. So it's not much, but it's something at least to try and, you know, give back on the problem solution area on that side of it.
And if you were talking a patio door, were you talking, you know?
I do have it on
with
this.
a patio on You know, so I mean, you're looking at more impervious.
It was just gonna be a slight difference. The grade was still gonna be the same. I do have it on this plan if you guys would like to look at that one. I will.
And I actually included 200 square feet for a patio and walkway allowance. And so,
You're still sitting at 20,
yeah, we're still,
or 21, call it 21.
yeah, we're
You
still
have
4% low, you know, so. we should-
There is an elevation too depicting it, so we're staying away from, as the grade comes down to that side of the building, so it would just be, the excavation would be equal, it would just be a matter of, we would still wouldn't have to retain any wall or anything like that to be able to achieve a walkout versus a lookout on that area. One thought would be, it might have a safer escape route for, you know, fire hazards in that lower level too, by trying to get a bedroom in the lower level and keeping it off of the upper levels that way.
You got an extra copy of that, Matt?
I have an electric one, but you could have this one.
Need it back to show something, Matt.
Sure.
YouTube area, we're gonna have to pass them.
Yeah, so if you guys want to have a site visit, just let us know. We can, we can see about just getting the house staked out, so you know what we're looking at. And
I would think that's,
I got one more question.
Yeah.
It just come up. What about access to that well? Is there enough room to get a vehicle alongside?
well, that well's going out.
Oh, it is, okay.
Okay, it says on note 1, but, and the neighbor's well's actually over the property line here.
Okay.
And then we're have a new well out by the road.
Okay.
You see,
The
you see
little
that, so,
blue dot.
The existing one's a shallow well.
Gotcha, okay, I see it. I missed it. My mistake.
Probably a sand point.
well, I would like to see the man that drove that down to the
Oh,
lake
really?
level, because it's about 40 feet down.
Oh, they used to do it.
Yeah, I know, they're a lot tougher in the old days.
Exactly.
And it's pretty rocky out there, so it wouldn't have been much fun, so, but,
okay.
I guess going forward for me, you know, if there's some options we can do or how we're gonna deal with the boathouse. And then some type of an, drainage plan, you know, going, you know, if we're gonna do a site inspection. Even if we don't do a site inspection, I mean, that's some of the things is what I would be looking for.
So Bernie, on this one, you've done a lot of, you know, a lot. What are your thoughts on a drainage plan? I mean, this one's really tough because you really don't have flat area for any type of rain garden. So, I mean, it gets pretty difficult here because you almost have to pipe everything down slope.
yeah, I would say we do it like we did on, I mean, this is.
Birds comes to mind.
Yeah, where we, yeah, that, you know, instead of running all the water,
Go eat.
yeah, instead of having all the water from the roof run over the bluff down the hill, we collected it all in a tile, 6-inch tile, they hand dug that tile down the bluff. And in that case, we had 100 feet of flat grade just before it got to the water. You know, it just came down the bluff and then just was flat, so then we actually just put riprap down there. In this case, you would have to do something similar, but you'd have to probably run it parallel to the shore. You know, it'd have to come down the hill and then you'd maybe have like a 6-inch pipe
Almost
buried
like
in,
a septic system.
buried in riprap that's, maybe even above the shore, then it would just bring it down and, you know, I mean, you could hide it, like if it was a riprap shoreline, you could just hide it behind that. That water would dissipate out right in.
Yeah,
You know.
almost like a septic line where you
Yeah.
perforated holes in that stretch, so it's not all coming out
In one
the
spot.
end of a 6-inch pipe, it's.
Spreading it out along the shoreline,
Yeah.
it would take the energy out of it, it won't have no sediment in it because everything, in birds, I think, I don't know if it's birds or another one, we actually had a tile inlet up there because it was kind of trapped, but this one, the ground around the property, if you take the impervious from the building away, it's not gonna change the grades around the rest of it really don't change anything, so that really won't affect any other. It should be just fine, I guess is what I'm saying, if we can deal with the impervious from the house.
No, there's just a bit of a ditch there. Could you grade the driveway backwards?
Right,
Slopes down towards the road.
right now it does. Right now it's, the garage floor I had at 1090 and the road's about 1088, so it drops about 2 feet.
There's a little bit of a ditch there, so if we could, I mean, it wouldn't take much to get whatever falls on the driveway backwards. And if it does now, well, that is great, that's perfect.
You're not changing that water flow.
Not changing
Yeah,
that.
so-
And there's compacted area there now from people driving in and out of there for years, and so you're not really going to, you're probably still gonna end up with a net decrease that goes down the slope, because you're taking everything that would have hit, and now piling it, and so you probably end up with a net decrease of the water actually coming down the slope, provided all the grading and stuff is done up by the road properly, so it doesn't channel it down this line.
Yeah, I think by putting gutters on there and tiling that would be really easy, but
With the elevation of the house too, and the house getting closer towards the road, with having gutters from the lakeside bluff area, we would be able to bring that water closer towards the lake and then have that water dissipate over natural grass, you know, for sediment and any kind of runoff to be collected at that point as well too, instead of it all getting washed straight from that bluff line going downhill. We can bring it back away and let it kind of equally disperse before it gets to its final destination.
yeah, there's a few ways to do it. And the nice thing is it's not like Maple Lake clay. It's gonna, this water out
It's gonna
here.
accept a fair amount.
Yeah.
Okay,
What do you wanna do?
your motion?
Well, I'll make the motion for a site inspection.
Okay. Then move for a site inspection, do I hear a second?
Oh yeah, get your second first.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
So what the board, just so we're clear, the board's recommending a motion to continue the matter to March 12th with establishment of a site inspection at the end of the day. Date and time will be established. Trying to make that clarify.
As soon as you can let us know,
Yep,
that'd be great.
I'll let you know today. I got both your emails, so I'll just email you.
Because if we can get,
You'll get a paper one too, but.
Would it be preferred to have the house kind of staked out on the
Yes.
property to be able to visualize that?
You
Okay,
can't get it in the snow.
sure.
Let's make Bernie go do that today.
There are some,
We like Bernie.
it is a fairly overgrown property on majority of it, so, because it hasn't been maintained for so long. Just to be able to pick those exact spots, if I could have time to clear the brush for you and show you kind of exactly where we're proposing for all that to be. Also down on the boathouse side, to save injury, I could definitely take some photographs too of what it would look like at that point and see how it's showing into the water and where we propose it to be also with it.
Well, we'll be out there. We can stay on top of the bluff and look down over the hill, I'm sure,
Yeah.
you know, and see it. So,
bring your sled.
yeah, there you go.
March
Make
12th
sure
is,
you wear a helmet.
March 12th is the next meeting date?
March 12th would be the next meeting date. If we want a little more time, we can build in a little more time too. It's kind of up to you if you want the 12th, or we can go with April 9th, I think it is. Kind of, if you want a little more time, we can give you more time.
I think it should be fine. I'd just like to accurately have it staked out for you on schedule of, like,
We'll
usually
take that
a
into
web
consideration
survey.
when we set the date.
Sure.
Okay, moved and seconded? All in favor?
Oh, aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Good work. Matt, I'll come on after this other one.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Scott name Terry? Nope, give your name to Terry.
Oh, Jean Sutherland?
Thank you.
Bernie Miller.
Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, what we're dealing with is a 6,573 square foot lot on Lake John. This is off of the east side of the lake, so it's a little bit different location, much different topography than the previous request. And so the request here is to replace the existing 560 square or 68 square foot one level dwelling that is 33.5 feet from the OHW, 7.7 and 8 feet from the property lines, with a new 22 by 30, 660 square foot one level dwelling with a 6 foot storage space above, and a 330 square foot attached garage. The structure would be 60.2 feet from the OHW and 10 feet from both property lines. The septic system would be a proposed type 4. It'd be 2 feet from the edge of the road right of way, 5 feet from the property line, and 18.8 feet from the attached garage. The proposal is listed as meeting the impervious surface requirements. It is allowed, there is a little bit of an allowance for patios, but it's extremely tight. So with this, the plan doesn't show any walkways or patios, and there's only 113 square feet left to get until you get to that 25% maximum with the basically just the driveway and the cabin. You know, when the board considers replacement, it should be noted that although there is a detached garage here, that detached garage was never permitted. It is a fairly recent structure, and so it's not included as part of the placement category. And so the request here is replacement and expansion of the house with an attached garage, which the square footage of the expansion includes the attached garage itself. Otherwise, a lot of times with these, the garage is old, legal non-conforming, we include that in the square footage, and okay, what's the difference? In this case, or I should say that is not the case here. I really don't have a whole lot more to add. I do have plans. As mentioned, it does have a roof pitch, and there will be a 6 foot storage area that will be accessed. It'll be indirect access, not a staircase, and pictures of the existing structure. We did receive approval from the township, and we did have disapproval from the Loney's that was attached in your packets, and they also included pictures of their site with some water issues from another recent request in the area. And then we see a positive response from the Isaacsons. They approved of the variance. We do also have both of those two. The people that did submit comments are also on our virtual meeting.
Okay, you have anything else to add, ma'am?
No, it's just that the building is probably 50, 60, 70 years old. We've got carpenter ants. The flooring is cracked. We continually have water problems. Every 2-3 years, we're out there trying to find out what's happening with the drain tile, digging up the ground, putting up more dirt. It's just getting to the point where we just can't keep doing this. We have a grandson now. He's 5th generation on Lake John, so we'd like to keep this in the family. To do this, we're selling our house in Albertville to build this place because we don't have money to do it on our own. I mean, to have 2 places. So that's why we're doing a year-round home. I do know, like you said, the Loney's that are north of us, right now they're a little higher than us, so we do get water from them. The people south of us, they rebuilt, I forget how many years ago, but they put a swale in.
2012, something like that?
Is it only that?
13 or something, yeah.
Yeah, but they put a swale in, and so now we no longer get water from their backyard, which was really helpful. And we understand about the water. Like I said, we do get water in our cabin. And we've talked to Sticks and Stones. Bernie also mentioned about helping us with directing water away from the Loney's. We don't want to do that to them. We've even told them that we don't want to. that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so I can jump in here a little bit. So basically, we've got this thing, you know, there, first off, it's just legally is a, I mean, if you look at the plans, it's a 1-bedroom, right? I mean, it's the smallest thing I've ever worked on, to be honest with you. The septic code doesn't really, it starts at 2 bedrooms, okay? So everything for a septic starts at 2 bedrooms. So we basically put the smallest sewer, type 4 sewer, push it back absolute as far back as we can. Excuse me. To be able to try to get some type of structure as far back from the lake as we can. I mean, we like to try to stay the 10, we like to try to stay the 10 feet from the side property lines, you know, just kind of as, although you get much less than that, it's hard to create swales, it's hard for construction. You know, this lot has a little bit, I think it has a little bit of a taper to it, so, you know, we need to, well, you can see the one corners, we're 10 feet from the north line, and then the south corner close to the lake's 10 feet, but then as you get a little further back where the house jogs to the garage, it's 13.1. So there is some bit of a taper on that lot. So we basically, yeah, and I think, I don't know how many times, you know, your house designer send plans. I'm like, no, you're over square footage. We have to keep going down. And so, I mean, they basically took their garage. I mean, their garage is so small that, you know, you can park in it, but it's as minimal size as you can. You know, actually, the garage is smaller than the garage that's there. You know, it's basically taking this cabin and that garage, shoving them together, and it's like 80 more square feet. I mean, it's a win from the road, it's a win from the lake, you know, but in order to, they don't want to live there with a holding tank, and they want a full septic system. And so we did pretty much everything we possibly can to get a septic system. This actually was a full year of working on various issues through this whole thing. So it's, you know, to me, I mean, my opinion, we're not really adding anything and we're pulling everything away, so.
Okay, Dan?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, we should go to the public. Do the Loney's have any comments? You have to unmute yourself. Okay, how about the Isaacsons?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, there you are.
All right, so this is the Loney's.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so our, you know, biggest concern obviously is that we've been put in the bottom of the, what I call the soup bowl with, you know, what was done to the north of us, going to these meetings and objecting to the special septic and so on and so forth. We were told rain gardens were going to be put in. That never happened. And I submitted you the pictures of our constant low area that's always wet and turns into a pond, literally, at times. The Sutherlands have put in a drain from their bathroom shower that drains onto the property line, I mean, a foot away, to try and, you know, limit the amount of water that they collect in their holding tank and so on and so forth. And the fact that garage that they now have is unpermitted, so it's not like you're making a smaller footprint because that wasn't permitted to begin with. The fact that variances are required again on all 4 property lines, and they're trying to shoehorn a house into a tiny little cabin. Like I stated, I think that likely the Sutherlands have this, if not the smallest, one of the smallest lots on the lake. And I know that, as their property gets raised, and here we are, they're talking about the 5th generation. Well, we also have inherited our cabin, which will remain a cabin, because that's what the lot is used for and should be with that size. And we plan on passing it down to our grandchildren. But at the point, that there will be anything left. And we have a shallow well, so when they start, making the drain field or the septic system that they're, trying to implement in this property, it's kind of like, is anybody looking out for the little guy? Which, seems to be us, because, like I said, we fought this on the north end. Now we're fighting it on the south end.
Okay.
Can you put
Are you done?
pictures up,
Oh, go ahead.
Barry? Can you put those pictures up of the flooding?
Yep, just give me just 1 second. Something just
Oh, a turkey.
With a turkey standing in a waterfall? I got about to say.
Here's what we have on a regular basis.
And that's on the north side of their lot, not on our side.
Right, which is
And
the,
like Carol said, there were supposed to be rain gardens put in, and they are never done.
She's got the floor, so.
Oh, sorry.
Well, and one of the issues too is in this area, rain gardens aren't gonna do much good. You just don't have enough slope to promote the proper drainage. You're actually better off doing something above grade with some type of swale, because there's just enough slope. Am I wrong, Bernie?
No, yeah, me and Barry talked about how to deal with this, and, I mean, it's certainly doable, and I think that's why that adamant to have that 10 feet. And, I mean, so sometimes here, the water comes, so that water level sitting right there is not the same level as the lake level. So sometimes with all the disturbance in that water ends up being perched on top of that soil, and because it's so flat, it has no place to go and it's disturbed, it doesn't soak in. So it's a matter of figuring out some type of drainage for that. There's certainly ways to be able to do it. It's been done, like the neighbor to the south demonstrated how they were able to do that. There's a handful of things and different ways it can be done. It's just that it has to be done. I mean,
again, this is what we were promised when we fought this battle with the north side, not naming names. And rain gardens were part of the fix for that. And now to be told that rain gardens don't work, it's like, well, they don't work now, they didn't work then. Why were they part of, the proposal?
Well, all I can say is that was probably the best idea at the time. I can't really speak to it, but that's about the only answer I can give you. And I guess I really don't have any more to add for that existing problem. In reference to this particular one, yeah, it's gonna be from a fill standpoint, the structure has to be elevated because of the lowest floor elevation requirements. Right now, it doesn't meet it. Any new construction would have to meet it unless the board said they didn't have to. It is not a floodplain lake, and so it's not, the elevation requirement isn't estimated. This is similar to what we went through with Pruitt in a couple of meetings. Where the addition, in that case it was an addition, the addition would have to be, what was it, 1.4 feet above the floor it was being attached to. Or buried that height requirement because it's ordinance, it's not FEMA regulation that it meet that. It's recommended, but it is ordinance standard that can be varied. Where if we're dealing with actual designated floodplain lakes, it can't be. And so I'm just making that a point that the board could consider.
Being that we're going to have more water on this lot now with this building, what about our shallow well?
Well, that's the other portion. Bernie, you can address that. I mean, right now, the septic system at this point in time could not be installed because it doesn't meet the 100-foot setback to a shallow well. But I'll let Bernie kind of give you the rundown on that.
Yeah, so we were working with the Department of Health on that. We've went through numerous conversations, looking into, there's a number of issues there, mostly, so at this point, it's a chicken or the egg, so we started back this summer, and we tried starting with getting the well variance out of the way first. Well, with COVID, the well inspectors were they had to work the line to answer calls for COVID. You couldn't get anybody, they weren't allowed to be able to meet anybody out there and look at it. So we couldn't get actually anywhere on that all summer. So then it's the chicken or the egg. Do you get that first, or do you try to get the variance for the house first, right? Because obviously, if you get a variance for the house and you can't do the well, you can't build this house. So, you would probably have to come back, or you'd have to do it under replacement and stay with the holding tank. The fact of the matter is, they're not going to put the money into it unless they can have a septic system. So it's like, so he said, well, we can try to get the county approved first with the condition, which is, you don't even have to put the condition because, ultimately they're not going to be able, if the proposal is for a house with a type 4 septic system, and if there's not a variance granted for the well, then they can't put the septic system in, they can't build the house. They have to come back to do some variance for replacement or something like that. So, I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, but.
Well, it depends upon how it's done. The one thing I would say is that perhaps amendment to the notice needs to be made. So if there is the possibility that if they don't get the septic or something else, they don't do this, regardless of how it goes, that existing garage would have to be removed.
It's already gone.
So the Department of Health, so we've done this over the past years many times. At this point right now, they're pretty confident. It's pretty common. You could get down to 75 feet from a well, or even 50 feet, sometimes depending on the situation for the shallow well. Right now they're making sure. Quite a bit of effort went into figuring out and getting the information for the house to the south to find out where the plumbing is, because a new well also has to be 50 feet from plumbing in any building. So we've been looking into the properties up and down here, going back and forth with Scott and back and forth with the Department of Health to make sure we don't need a variance for the new well that's going on this property. And, but yeah, they're fairly confident. It's ultimately a decision is made down in St. Paul. But based on everything they said, they said it doesn't seem like it's, really that out of line compared to other things that get approved. If there's any other way you can do it, you have to do it. But if there's no other way you can do it, then they generally will grant the variance. So, pretty confident that will get approved, and that's within a few days of being sent to St. Paul. So the guy's been working on that for about 3 weeks now. I talk to him daily. His name's Keith Donabar from the Department of Health. And he said he's just a few days away from being able to send it down there. And then they'll make their decision, and doesn't know how long that will take. So.
At what point do you draw the line on how many variances are allowed per property,
It's it's all site specific. I had a property on Cedar Lake back when we did Kernan Township that had 21 variance requests. 21 different setback variances for one house.
Well,
So, I mean, it's all very much property specific. There's a lot that goes into it.
What are the Sutherlands doing for their water? Not a shallow well, I bet.
No, it's a deep well.
You'll be drilling a deep well?
Yes.
Yeah, a deep well will be drilled as part of the project.
and variances are gonna be required for that as well, I would assume.
No, not for the drilling of the new well.
There's enough room for the required, did I hear 50 feet from plumbing and so on?
Yes.
Yes.
So how deep do they dig these so that their water is good?
That is gonna be up to the well driller. That's information that we cannot know, and we actually don't even get involved in the well drilling process. That's permitted all through the state.
So if we have water that we can't even use, that's just too bad, right?
Well, I can't speak to that. The Department of Health would have to speak to that.
Department of Health? Okay.
Yep.
I would like to add something about the drainage, and maybe if they're on, it's helpful,
Yeah.
but it's up to you.
Yeah, let's, we do still have another property in the area, Isaacson's to the north. Do you have any comments?
We submitted a note saying that we would support the variances. We need to point out that when we built with swales on both the north and south property lines that were made to help drain the water quickly but not, it takes time for water to drain. Most of the time, those drainage problems from the rainfall like that are gone within 24 to 36 hours. We have a deep well that is 110 foot deep, and that is probably where the Sutherlands are going to have to go for depth-wise for a deep well. The swales are made of very permeable material with 6-inch drain pipes going from the back line of the property to the lake. I think we can leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
They don't work.
Okay, I guess the one thing I'd point out about the elevation differences is what we're looking at is about 3 feet. So the floor of the existing cabin needs to come up roughly 3 feet. That's
Oh my gosh.
Could you please mute yourself at this point?
He said that to her.
And that's what the required elevation would be. It calls for 4 feet above the highest known water level. And so that's what would be at 4 feet, would be about a 3 foot difference on that. Bernie, you wanted to address?
Yep, add a couple things. I'll say as far as the cabin goes, the floor of the cabin, again, that doesn't mean the grade of the whole cabin around the whole cabin has to be at that elevation. Back when you move back, you get just a little bit, it's just a little bit higher. You actually get, so from the floor of the cabin to the ground is about 2.6 feet in the middle of the house right now, but that doesn't mean that the whole grade around the sides of the cabin is going to be up to that same elevation. So I mean, how high you raise the house doesn't really make any difference. It's what happens to the grade around. And as far as the drainage, I don't know that many people understand what's really happening out here, but most of the soil in this whole area has about this much peat right above the lake level. okay?
Since people can't say
That's 6 inches.
6 to 8 inches.
Yeah, so 6 to 8 inches of peat, right above the sand, okay? And the majority of the soil right underneath that peat is sand, all right? And that when you drill into that peat, you can have soaking wet soil the whole way down till you get to that peat. And then when you get to that peat, it's dry. It's
To the sand.
It's dry till you get to the sand, and it's basically sealed off this entire area. Some of the soil that was put in here on top of this, some of this has been filled in over the years, and they didn't use sand, they used whatever they had, and it's a mix of clay and whatever. So now the water has to soak in through the fill, okay? And then it gets to that peat, it has to move sideways. And it doesn't move sideways very fast because, you know, it's clay and fill and whatever. So just like we do for the drain field, the only thing we can do in the drain field is to dig through that peat down to the sand, and that water then goes straight down into the sand and goes sideways into the sand, and it's done. So I don't think people understand that if you want the water to go away from your property, you just need to take out that layer of impermeable soil down there. And, you know, if you do swales or do any type of correction or any type of rain garden, it has to be able to drain. And it can't drain because of what's right underneath there. And I can't say that's where it's everywhere, but we've done a handful of jobs out here, and it's very consistent across this whole area. And I can't even say for sure that it was filled in. Like, it was filled in somehow above the peat, but I think a lot of times what we see, even on Sylvia and other places where the ice ridge pushes over from the lake, back over like maybe what was used to be a wet area, and fills it in naturally. And so I think there's a combination of both of them things happening. But it's definitely, every place we've been along here, you get down to sand. And if you can get down to sand, you can get that water to go down, but you can't have stuff in between stopping it. So so I'm optimistic that there's ways to make this work. We've proved it with numerous, this technique with numerous drain fields. And then that's actually putting more water in than, an average rainfall, maybe not as much as a 50 or 100-year storm, but I think there's ways to deal with it. And then there's always going to be situations where, like in Buffalo, they plan everything, and then you get 2 17-inch rains back to back, and you flood you got 6 feet of water through the whole town. You can't plan for that every day. There's going to be situations where stuff like that's going to happen. But I think for the most part, these type of situations where there's standing water and that, I think that can be fixed on own people's property. And we, I think these people and this project should be responsible for their own water and not be allowed to put it on other people's property. And that's just reasonable, and that's the intent here, so.
Well, Bernie, you said earlier that if we approve this and say that, go ahead, yeah, you can do it, that the state still has not come back with approval, that they would not override us and say, no, you can't do it?
Well, they can say, if they don't approve this well variance, then, then basically they.
They'd have to come back to the board because right now the proposal is to have this structure on a type 4 septic. If that variance isn't approved, then it's on a holding tank, which completely changes what the board had approved. It's not now consistent with what the board had approved. Have to come back and ask for that same structure on a holding tank, or the board condition it in a number of ways.
Yes, and they said that they won't do this with the holding tank.
Okay, so that's out.
So.
It's still better if the board conditioned it accordingly.
Yeah, I think that, it's going to require approval of that well variance.
Okay, you're still on
I'm still on the hook.
you're still on the hook, buddy.
We've had a lot of discussion with the drainage, and that was gonna be my first point. Those, in our packets, those pictures of water are a deep concern because I don't like to cause problems sitting on this board. I mean, and like you said, Bernie, it's the Sutherland's responsibility, the applicant's responsibility for their own water. And I agree with you. I understand sand. Lived on it my whole life. It goes down. But you have to have some type of a plan to get it to go down, or some type of a drainage plan to do that. I didn't see that here, you know, so I guess I would like to know how you're gonna do it. I know there's ways to do it. I'm not even gonna challenge you on that, but how are we gonna do it is important to me, because I guess if I was on the board and I created that problem from the other neighbor, pushing it from the north, I apologize, because it's never our intent here, or my intent. So that would be a large concern. Looking at the plans and you're moving it back off the lake, that I appreciate. You know, getting a further setback, being at 80-some feet and not being as close, for me, that's a plus. And the well, I had a question there, but that's been pretty much discussed. I mean, that's through the state. That we'll wait to see how that works out. The side yard setbacks at 10 feet, I know we've approved them before, but it's still tight depending on how you do your drainage plan to get to the well up in front of the house, would be one of my questions there for future, and not having to get onto the neighbor's property or putting wheel tracks or challenging that. So I guess for me, I'd like to see some type of a drainage plan, for sure.
Can we do a drainage plan? Because when I talked to Sticks and Stones, they said they needed to see the foundation put in first.
Well, yeah, but we can still design a plan.
Okay.
We can design a plan. It's just that, I mean, a lot of times it's a condition of the variance to have that plan, instead of having that plan in advance. So I guess that on some of these, we haven't been, you know, I agree that's what we've been doing, and then you end up with ones and they may not install them, and that concerns me, you know. So if you have a plan, it's on record, and I know that's not something we've normally done, I agree with that, but it concerns me that it's getting followed through and getting taken care of, if that's the case out there.
Okay. Paul?
Hey, Bernie, I got a question for you. I noticed no paved driveway. Did you plan on one? And if so, how would that affect impervious coverage?
Oh, it's there.
But it looked like on the Google map there wasn't a driveway, but you do have one. I must have missed it then. Okay.
Yeah, it's on this plan here.
Oh, okay. All right, I missed it.
We have a proposed one
Okay.
on there. As far as the existing driveway, we also included some. And I think that that's part of the impervious issue, that when you push that garage back, you just end up with.
So the next question is can you show me on the map what side is flooding and where your house is? I'm guessing it's the other side from you.
Our
is that
house,
Actually,
it's next,
the flooding pictures were from up in here.
Okay, and your house, okay, so,
Their house is here.
and the flooding we get, there's the tree. We get flooding right in here.
okay,
We have drain tile that will alleviate that and bring it out towards the front.
okay,
But then we also get a lot of water here because of all the drain tile and then the swale that comes through here.
okay.
So then this shed up front gets flooded,
Okay.
which is gonna be gone anyways, so
Okay.
that's no big deal. But that's where we get all our water.
So then, if I'm looking, maybe you have the topography, all the maps. I'm getting a mixed message here. She says she's in a bowl, and then I heard you were slightly higher. Can you clarify that for me a little bit? Elevation-wise, your lot compared to the neighbor's lot?
I think their place is just a little bit higher than ours. The water comes off their roof, hits the ground and comes our way. There's a big tree out front that has a mound there, so the water does come down. Our backyard is a little bit lower, like I said, back by our tree. It's lower than theirs.
I'm just trying to get a sense for the
It's
topography.
just very undulating. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's basically,
You have no
But
pocket.
subtle,
the
it's
ro-
very subtle.
the road, basically, as you get towards the road, it gets to 1057. As you get towards the lake, it's 1055. Everything else in between is around 1056 and just goes like this.
Okay.
So, you know, anywhere there's this, you know, if you get a big rain and you don't, and that
Okay.
water can't soak in,
All
it's
right.
just gonna take a long time for it to soak sideways, you know.
That helps. You know, I like the fact that you're significantly moving the house back away from the lake. Looks like to me you improved a side setback on one side, which is, I like to see that. And, you've reduced impervious coverage and along with moving some miscellaneous structures, so I like that. And I don't have a problem with you meeting the minimum 24 width. I think it's a practical solution, for what you're working with and the size of the lot. So I'm okay with a variance on the width for that. And like Dan had mentioned, I am concerned about, you know, flooding, don't want to create another problem. And I'd like to see a, how you're going to do that. And the distance between the well, I'd like to see demonstrated how you can access your well to get work on it. You know, I think we only allow, is 10 feet enough space for them to service your well, your new well?
Well, talking to the well drillers, they tell us they don't need to drive there
Okay, all right.
anymore.
Oh, okay, so,
Why do you not drive there and drill the well?
Well, they do drill the well before they build the house.
Okay.
Tear the old house down, drill the well, build the house, and then for any of the service, they say they don't have to drive.
Basically a pickup if they have to pull.
And there is a guy that we've used from Little Falls on a couple other variance projects where they had to drill the well down not a bluff, but down a steep hill, like down you know, towards the lake. And he's got a little all-terrain, he can basically take it anywhere, you know, it's just basically like you know, just a little miniature well drilling rig that's four-wheel drive. So in the event that they had to drill another well right next to this one in 20 years because something happened to this well, they still have that ability to get there.
my other question is there a way, because we did improve the side setback on one side. If we were to able to move that back because of the shape of the lot, if you could move it back just a few feet, would we be able to improve the other setback on the well side at all? Is there any possibility to just slightly move that back? It wouldn't take much to increase, looking at how.
Then it impacts the septic.
Okay,
Yeah, right now we're getting, I mean, I don't know. I went through every different type of tank manufacturer and different type of system to try to figure out how to get the tanks in there. I like if I can, I mean, having 10 feet from the tank to the house is, to me, seems like a good idea.
okay, all right.
I mean, and so I have figured it out how to get it 10 feet from there and still get this drain field, but the drain field's 18.6 feet. You know, a person, you know, if you came back another foot or two, I mean, what's the difference between 10 feet and 8 feet from tanks to a house? I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it actually doesn't technically add another variance, but adds another point where it's too close for the septic. But, you know, and I think you would gain, I'll try to do some quick math, 30 and 3, yeah, you wouldn't gain more than a couple tenths if you went back,
Oh,
like,
okay.
you know.
All right. I thought it might be a little bit more, but.
Yeah.
So, and the only other thing that I can see is that, you know, typically on lakeshore lots, we deal with storage so much. And in this case, you know, the lakeside storage has to go due to impervious coverage. And so now, you know, there can't be any, I mean, there isn't room for a garden shed. Now, storage of anything here has to be inside the structure itself. So, you know, just bringing that, making sure the board is aware of it, because that's something that we constantly hear. Well, I need a variance for a shed because I need to store stuff. Well, in this case, that attached garage is the only storage.
Can I respond to that? Our son lives in Maple Lake, so he's like 10, 15 minutes from where the cabin is right now. The garage that was on there, we took it apart, moved it to his lot. That's where we're storing all of our boats, kayaks, and And we plan to, in the summertime, store our snow blower there. So we do have storage planned, so that, because we, Bernie says, the garage, we'll be getting rid of our truck and getting a smaller vehicle. And with the ceilings high, we're hoping to put up some shelving to put storage up top on there. So we feel that we can handle this, thanks to our son being able to move that shed for us and put all our stuff on his land.
Okay, anything else, or are we ready for a, okay,
Why are you so opposed to a holding tank? I see both your neighbors have holding tanks. It looks like what you have now is a holding tank. Am I correct?
Right.
Well,
The neighbors south of us, their places aren't year-round homes. The Isaacsons, who are north of the Loneys, they have a drain field, I think similar to what we have. I like the idea of putting the water back in the ground instead of hauling everything away. Plus, to sit there and have to call somebody to come and pick up the refuse every once in a while, I'd like to be able to take a hot shower and leave the water on and not turn it off like I do now. I'd like to have a wash machine. I'd like to have a dishwasher. And for me, that would mean a drain field. If I have to go to a holding tank, I guess I just have to live with all the luxuries I like to have.
Well, I just see that, a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot. Some full-time homes have holding tanks, and they just schedule somebody that every 2 weeks, they just come and they just pump it out, and you can use I'm not gonna say as much water as you want, but once you know how much you can use every week or every 2 weeks, it seems like a holding tank would alleviate a whole bunch of your problems here.
But it also means that the cost of pumping it continues to go up, because we do have a holding tank now. And every year it goes up $20, $30 every time we pump. And at some point, when can we no longer do holding tanks? I mean, I was told that they put this out on farmers' fields. Well, at what point can we no longer do that? And then what do we do? I'm just trying to prepare for the future, that's all.
Well, I can add a couple things. I do know, like in the East Coast where they do enforce a lot of regulation for land application and what they do with it, they heavily enforce it. That people pay $300 to $400 1,000 gallons. Okay, that's 2 to 3 times what a person pays around here. When they, we started pumping in 2005, and they decided not to. The EPA decided to hand it over to the PCA, and the PCA decided that there was no problem in Minnesota, so they loosely regulate it. But in order to properly pump a septic tank and land apply it, I mean, right now I could hire it for about half the cost what it cost me to do it right. So it doesn't pay to do it. The prices are going to go up. There will be additional enforcement in time. And I don't get off in a rant, but there's studies in Wisconsin where they did the same thing. They said, well, they had lots of different septic systems, holding tank, lots of problems in the whole county, and they decided to come in and put sewer in there, and they took all that water out of that watershed. They figured they were going to clean up all their lakes and make everything better. Actually, the municipal wells that were in that county, the aquifers dropped over 200 feet. The lakes got more concentrated with phosphorus and nitrogen. By not properly recycling that water in that county, they actually ruined and destroyed the water. So to me, it's a good solution for a seasonal cabin. It's not very practical for people who have to pump that, and I don't think it's, if you live there, and I think that it creates a lot of stress and is a big nuisance for a lot of people that live on a holding tank. I mean, I find that is the nuisance factor and the stress and the anxiety of having to know where your tank level's at and when you're gonna have to pump it and if you're gonna be able to get that guy. You know, it's just one more thing to think about that they don't always like to have, so.
Okay, so to kind of move us along, it sounds like Member Mall would like to see a drainage plan. So if we're going to continue, we're going to be, you know, around the corner from this. Does the board want to look at it while we're out there?
I guess, how's everybody else feel about seeing a drainage plan?
A drainage plan I'd be satisfied with there.
Yeah,
You know, I have a suggestion, and it's just a suggestion, it's certainly not anything I would expect, but, you know, it's an idea about, since you're gonna be demolition in the house, changing some of the grade, about, is there any possibility, maybe you could, you know, when you're out, the heavy equipment's out there, that you could maybe modify a little bit of your lot to help the neighbor at all with drainage? Just a thought. I mean, you didn't create the problem, and you're not responsible to fix your neighbor's problem. But as long as you're in the process, you have the maps, maybe there's a slight modification that you could do as a good gesture to help that neighbor. But again, it's just a suggestion, it's not a requirement or a stipulation by any means, but something to think about, that's all.
Well, I think the plan that we have, I mean, coming up with the plan will include addressing the water from us.
Okay.
I mean, are you asking to go onto the neighbor's property and get permission to do something on their property to help them out?
It was just a matter of say, hey, maybe the two of you could get together and say, hey, look, maybe if we did this modification, it's just a suggestion, it's not I don't wanna suggest by any means that it's a requirement, but you know, just say, hey, you know, what if we, you know, we're able to cut a swell right through the corner front there a little bit, that might alleviate some of the problem. And if it can, I would say go for it. And again, you're not obligated to do it, but it really would be a good time to explore that, since you got everything there, equipment and
Yeah.
But anyway, just leave it for
I
thought.
agree, and it wouldn't be that hard to do, and
Yeah.
I think what we'll do will make I think anything that we do here will also benefit them on their side as well. Because, you know, the water under the ground, you know, it's trying to find the path of least resistance. If we make a way for it to go, it's gonna take some of their water underground towards our way as much as we can. So.
That would be a big help to see that, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
So does the board want to continue it for that water management plan?
Yes.
And then would you want to do the site inspection as part of that as well?
We're gonna be out there.
Okay.
If we're gonna continue it, why
Might
not
as well.
throw it on the agenda?
Why not go look at it?
Okay.
Might as well look at it.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue this, to get a drainage plan submitted and to do a site inspection and continue it until, what was it, March 12th?
The motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Paul. Any other conversation? All in favor? Aye.
For a short meeting, it's getting, short agenda, it's getting to be a long meeting here already.
Well, we had a couple challenging ones,
Thanks, guys.
and thanks for your work, Barry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yolanda Peterson.
What was your first name?
Yolanda.
John Peterson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the property is in Maple Lake Township, it's 2.59 acres, and is surrounded by a wildlife management area, or at least on two sides. The request is to remove an existing detached garage that is 1.8 feet from the side property line and replace it with a 16-foot 4-inch by 23-foot 5-inch living space addition and a 22 by 26 attached garage that would bring the existing structure, the dwelling, 6.2 feet from the side property line. In this case, it is a 30-foot primary structure setback based on the acreage, and so it's already non-conforming, but this brings it to 6.2, which is still 5 feet further from the property line than that existing detached structure. So I do have the aerials and the survey with the sketch on it. There was another addition plan sketched on here, and we kind of talked with the applicant. We re-sketched it because between the township's response and kind of what he was looking for, we moved from what the original was. His original plan, then he had his plans redrawn to meet the setbacks that we show here. And so the new plan, like as mentioned, is 6.2 feet from the side property line. The township is the only respondent, and they approved the building a minimum of 5 feet from the property line. So that's kind of where that change in the plan came from. He downsized the width of the garage in order to get that 5 feet. No other comments, and I don't have anyone on the WebEx call, so we're good to go.
Okay, Paul?
The garage fit, on the original plan at least, it closely.
Do we want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Do you have any more to add? Now's a good time.
I don't, other than we're kind of worked on this for quite a while, and we're trying to figure out what our options are, and this is kind of where we've ended up.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you ever get pellets to hit your house?
No.
No. I've thought about that, though. I've heard it's not a bad plan. So the idea is obviously to have a structure we can park in during the winter especially. We originally wanted to have an entrance from the front of the garage, but with the space constraints, we just tried to shrink it down as much as practically possible. And we don't really have an option to move it to the other side of the house where the land is because of all the utilities that run through there with the septic and the propane and the well and everything else. So, I mean, that's really all I really have.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, the garage footprint is very close to the original garage size, and I don't think that the new structure would have any greater impact than what the existing one already has. And the location of the garage in addition it's in a rural area, so it's not likely to conflict with anybody in a long time. And the location just makes sense, and you've put a lot of thought into it, and I think you did a good job, so I'm fine with it.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I guess I can confer, you're just kind of rearranging things more than, and plus the addition to the house. You're really not, you're helping a little bit by being a little bit further away from the property line. I mean, that's a plus. I see where your options are limited. Is the topography fairly flat in the?
It is.
Around your.
It's a little marshy behind us in the wetland, the waterfall preserve area, but it's not, we're elevated, high enough around, beyond that, so. But yeah, there's not, in that area, it's very level, it's just on the upper side of the property, it climbs, but.
On the east side.
Yeah, on the east side, it's more of a hill, but, no, it's pretty level site.
Okay. Other than that, I guess, like Paul said, is, options are limited, and it looks like, you're just kind of rearranging where your garage is to where it's gonna be, so, I guess I'm okay for now.
Yeah?
Gary, you answer this question. How did the garage get built a foot from the property line?
Long time ago.
Okay. So it's basically.
About 100 years ago, I think.
There's no, we don't have permit regs.
Okay.
It's,
So it's,
you know, based on the picture, which is the bottom one there, it's certainly not a new structure.
okay. And I guess that was, somewhat of my question is, why was it built so close? But if it's
Yeah, I
a
think the
situation.
property line was drawn after the building was put.
Yeah, at some point, I think somebody sold land to the, would it be the state or?
Or
Yeah,
the,
state.
And I don't know why
Yeah.
they would have drawn the lines that way, to have it like 2 feet from the property line.
The state.
Okay, so maybe that's it.
Enough said.
Yeah,
But that helps me to
Yeah.
develop a hardship or a reason. I mean, I too don't have a challenge, but I mean, why is the garage where it is? And that explains it for me.
okay.
So, no, we're moving away. Township agrees with it, so.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, I hear a motion. Motion man?
Well, I gotta find it there.
Yep.
Where is it here? Here we go. I'll make a motion to approve, the variance as regulated in section 155.026, 155.048, F2, chapter 155, title 15, land usage and zoning of the Wright County Code of Ordinance to allow the replacement of the existing 16-foot by 20-foot detached garage that is 1.8 feet, we have some modifications to that. Oh, okay. 1.8 feet from the side property line with a new 16 by 4 inch by 23 by 5 inch living space and a 22 by 26 attached garage on the existing dwelling. Proposed addition is to be 6.2 feet from the side property line at the closest point in the back of the dwelling away from the county road. Existing dwelling is 120 feet from the center line of County Road 37.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
All aye.
John, aye.
Dan, aye.
Bob, aye.
Good to go.
Well, thank you.
Plans. Let's go.
Okay,
We'll get you permitted.
all right, thanks for your time.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think at least one motion today.
Or not done yet. You got one more yet.
Thanks, Derek.
Yes, take care. Stay warm.
Yeah, you too.
Couple more days, then we're looking for.
It's time to go home.
I was surprised driving in this morning, my truck said 18 below. That's the second time I've left my house in a week and it's 18 below.
You gotta live further north, it's 20 up there.
Yeah, where I was going up the lake, I was supposed to go up like the woods this weekend.
Oh, it was 26.
Very low, night before last was 34.
Yeah, I want to say it was 35 this morning. They were saying it was 35 below up there.
And then if you get even just a smidge of debris.
It's cold.
I was up there once where the base temperature was 28 or 29 below and the wind picked up out of the northwest at about 25, 30. And we were staying inside the fish house. We were sleeping in the fish house, a big snowmobile out about 4 miles. And we woke up in the morning and we could barely see the glow of the heat. Propane was gelling inside the tank.
Wow.
It was so cold.
A few years ago, not that long ago, but a few years ago, we snowmobiled at 25 below. We got up in the morning at 25. And you gotta take your belts inside. When you start the sled, it goes,
Yeah, and yeah, you gotta make sure every bit of skin is
Yep.
covered.
We had one young guy with us that thought, you gotta have the goggles and all that stuff. When we got back, it was just solid black. Holding on pretty good.
Yeah. I'll give you your name, Terry, please.
Pardon?
Give your name to.
For the record, we need your names.
Your name.
Jerry Hoyka.
Jerry?
And Lester Hoyka.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what we have here is a lot line adjustment. The board had heard a request on this property in 1997 and designated how the property was to be kind of divided out at the request of the applicant, and then also designated out entitlements. So in this case, although we're dealing with the two properties in blue, the property to the north, the one that ends in 181301, that one was part of the request. That property had 3 entitlements assigned to it. And then the arrangement that the board approved actually is how the blue looks for the portion south of the road. And so what we're looking at is really just it's an adjustment of that previous order. They want to do a little bit of land swapping, give 183302 a little bit more frontage and that piece of tillable ground in between the blue and the road and the highway, and then a portion to the east would then go into the other portion of property. Nothing else is changing. Where the entitlements are or anything else, nothing else is changing. That 183302 has one entitlement. The 183300 has an existing house plus one. And so the number of entitlements are not changing, just strictly a swap of land. But since the board approved it based upon a specific plan, for title purposes, it has to come back, the board has to re-review it. So that's really what we're at. The only thing is did you meet with the township? I haven't gotten a response from them. I know you've been to them once.
What?
Township?
The township?
Yeah, I met with them, and this was back in, I think, November, and went through all of it with them. And basically, when it was done, they just thanked me for giving them all the information. And they said, we really don't have anything to act on because we don't have really anything to say about it. And, you know, I showed them where we...
In a case like a lot line adjustment, you know, when we deal with the variances or something that's a little bit different, that is more of extreme importance. In this case, they met with them. We just don't have that recommendation file. So it's up to the board whether or not you want to proceed with making a decision today or not. From a staff perspective, if they've met with them, I'm confident, and Bob, you might know.
They did come to the town board.
If you're comfortable with everything that's going on and the board is comfortable with what they do or not, if you want to make a motion today, you know, staff doesn't think that's out of your normal decorum.
Okay.
Do you want to hear their reasons?
Sure.
Any other comments from you folks?
What was that?
Any comments? Any you want to?
Well, the reason we're kind of switching those two is that my brother lives on the home place, and he kind of keeps that big swampy area as a wildlife area, and so he doesn't want to have someone buy that other parcel and have access to it.
It's under a fish and wildlife easement for wildlife, and I'd like to own the entire pond so that I don't have any issues with someone coming in and trying to do something different.
And that was, and then that other little part was part of that field, and you know, if someone's buying that parcel, that little corner would be part of it.
Okay. Up to you, Bob.
Well, and when they met with the township to, this part up here by the road, it was just kind of a second access point to the property if it would be approved. And then the township felt that the amount of ag land or whatever that on the east side of the property that's going to be proposed and joined with the larger east part there, that you know, it's about 50%. It's wasn't a significant farm area, but it was still kind of a concern. But in the end, the township agreed that it was an acceptable plan.
Okay.
What's tillable will remain tillable.
Right, just that'll be at a different owner,
Yeah.
perhaps.
And that's kind of what the board looks at with these. It's that, you know, when ownership changes, you just never know. You know, and so the board does tend to look at it as once it's under separate ownership, we can't guarantee anything because you never know.
Yeah.
You know, like in this case, although it's, you know, if the other property to the west were to sell, they weren't to give, if they didn't give you an easement to get to that, now all of a sudden you can't farm it because you don't have actual physical access to it without coming all the way around. So there's always that potential that it just becomes unfarmable because of whatever circumstances, or.
Well, the way it will be, there will be access on my property to get there and farm that.
There's
Yeah,
enough room there to.
yeah, there's plenty of room to get through, so.
Dan?
As far as the lot lines, I mean, I don't have a lot of, you know, anything against. My only question is the way it's angled, is there any way possible of getting the 300 feet of road frontage?
Well, that was kind of looked at, and it's not necessarily needed because there is 300 feet on the west side of the property. So there's road frontage in one spot already.
Oh, okay, because I didn't realize there was another road running.
Well, it's the highway. There isn't road frontage here, but right here. That's over 300 feet.
Okay, so there is enough in that area. Okay.
Now, whether or not you access it here or access it here,
Okay, so then we do have enough road frontage, so, yeah.
and it's more than what was there, it was only
Yep.
33 feet.
No,
Now it's-
and I agree, it's more than was there, but I was trying to, you know, make sure we had enough.
The only thing that would then come into play would be at some point if somebody wanted to,
Split it again.
you know, it ends up being 50, whatever the acreage is.
Yeah.
Somebody wanted to do a house mortgage, divide off the house and keep the rest,
Right,
then, yeah, then you're right.
That's what I was-
But there again, we can address that, the board
Yeah.
can address that at the time if it were to occur.
And what we had looked at too, that there's that little triangle that's not part of our property on the, right? And it's just basically some scrub brush that belongs to the little house across the road. And at some time, if the person that bought that property wanted to see if they could buy that little section, then they'd have all that frontage all the way along. I mean, it's not being used for anything, it's not farmable. It's just,
I don't get that way very often. Do they still have the Scottish Highland cattle in there?
No,
No, they don't?
no, that's a different owner now than when those people.
Little bit outskirts, but it's a road I used to travel a lot, and then there was always those long-haired Scottish Highland cattle in there, and they look so nice back. Just a personal question, sorry.
All right, Paul, we'll cut Barry off.
Yeah, the 2.5 acres is a modest change. It looks like, reading your report and everything, you guys have done your homework and you created a good plan on getting the property ready, and I have no problem with approving the variance. So.
Nor do I, so.
I'll make a motion. Sorry.
Paul, if you'd like, you can just, there again, there's a lot of PID numbers and stuff in here. If you just want to approve the lot line adjustment as per the plan submitted,
Okay,
we could make it a lot shorter.
all right, I'll make a motion to approve the lot line adjustment as submitted.
Okay, here, a motion?
Do we need orders or?
Yeah, that's all,
Okay.
let's get a second first.
I'll second it.
And then we can make that either administrative orders or the tax IDs be combined. How's that, Terry? If they can combine them under existing tax IDs, we can forego the order. But if for whatever reason they can't be, which I think we talked about that, there's no reason they can't be combined under existing IDs, then you can just do that. So what you would do is when you get the documents to do the transfer, you'll have a form that says combine tax parcels, submit that with it, and then they'll just combine them under those existing. The lines will change, but it won't create any new actual tax parcels.
Okay.
That's our goal, is just not to create any. As long as there's no mortgages or something like that, then there shouldn't be an issue with it.
So noted.
Okay, and moved, seconded, all in favor?
Paul, aye.
John, aye.
Dan, I.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, now we have to figure out a date for the site inspection.
Gary, I think they should be out there on Sunday morning when it's negative 23.
That's just me, man.
We can't get proper notices out, so we're good, Greg.
Oh, sorry.
Greg, we had 30 turkey around the deer feeder last night. along
Yeah,
with
they
8
like to
deer.
come by your place in the middle of winter. As soon as the snow melts, they go to your neighbor's lot.
Okay. All right. What do you got, Barry?
Let me do this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, so. Pull up my calendar. Right now. I have one in.
Must be casual Friday for Greg, he wasn't worried about time. Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Chair, my thought was sometime that first week of March. That gives enough time for Mr. Bronder to do his site prep work and maybe stake everything out. Also should be somewhat warmer than it is now. But there again, it's up to you guys to determine what date you want, and it's up to me to be there.
Towards the end of the week, the 2nd, planning and zoning has the site inspection already, so the 2nd is for sure out for me. Oh, I don't know, 4th or the 5th of March?
Which I'm in the office those days already, so that actually works out well for me.
Oh,
Either the 5th or the 3rd would work for me.
okay, and I'm open to it. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, same here. I'm open to whatever works for you guys.
Want to make it for the 5th?
Make it for the 5th, Paul.
Okay, I'll just take the day off then.
What time works best to meet here?
Morning, really.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
8:30?
8 is good for me.
8's good for me, yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. You Bob?
Yes, that's fine with me. And where do we meet?
Right out, either out front here or in the lobby.
Or, Bob, you're kind of on the way. We can always not, or, since we're right out there, if you want to meet at the Southside Township Hall.
Do we want to meet at Southside Township, Bob?
We can do that.
That's, Bob and I will meet you at Southside Township.
Okay, and John, it's up to you. You want to meet here or at the township? Paul's better off meeting here.
Yeah, I'll come in here.
You'll come in here,
I
okay?
usually have to stay in the area anyway.
Okay, so we'll meet here at 8 o'clock and plan on being on the site at 8:30. With the arrangements made for the.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for dismissal?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.